Good day, doctor. My name is Wei Yi. My matrix number is 270032. So I'm from Group 3, and Group 3 is consists of Gar Fe, Charmaine Tin Zi Jin, and also me. So in this presentation, we will be discussing about the non-governmental organization, NGOs, and also public opinions. Lastly, we will be discussing about media. Okay, so for the first topic, we'll be explaining the concept of NGO on foreign policy by studying on the role of NGOs in Malaysia and its impacts to foreign policy. So, what is NGO? NGO have been defined as the institution that independent of government and prioritize humanitarian objective instead of commercial. NGO will not be directly affiliated with government agencies or achieve any political power through their movement. So instead, NGO shall promote good governance in the society. So the political system of Malaysia is more of a quasi-democracy, which set a limit on freedom of expression towards its citizens through variety legislation with anti-democratic elements. The absence for civil freedoms was caused by the state's application of legislation. So in this research, it will be discussed on the several issues, which is what is the role of NGO in Malaysia, where NGOs is able to influence Malaysians foreign policy, how the NGOs influence the Malaysian foreign policy, and what is the impact of NGOs towards Malaysian foreign policy.
Okay, so first of all, in our first research question, what is the role of NGO in Malaysia? In Malaysia, NGOs are task-oriented and promoted by people with the same interests. The NGOs provide a variety of services and play a humanitarian role which reflects the citizens' concern to the government, monitor policies, as well as encourage political participation at the community level. In addition, the NGOs also provide analysis and expertise that serve as an early warning mechanism to help monitor and implement international agreements. Like some NGOs in Malaysia are organized around specific issues such as human rights, with the government as well as the agencies of the United Nations system will vary depending on the goals, locations, and tasks. For instance, NGO in Malaysia include the Management Institute for Social Change, MINISO, WWF Malaysia. These organizations consist of different objectives. For example, MINISO focus on activities include community development, environmental protection, human rights, women roles in development, consumption, and alternative economic models. Meanwhile, WWFM has established a good cooperative relationship with the government through extensive cooperation in the certification, establishment, and management of various protected. So besides, the NGO of Malaysia had successfully maintained close relations with the government. NGOs express the centrality of citizens and contribute impacts on government policies. For example, this could be seen from the cooperation between the National Council of Women's Organization, NCWO, with the Ministry of Women's Affairs of the Prime Minister's Department. So, NGOs play the role as also non-state actor in Malaysia. The close relation of the NGOs with the government had allowed the NGOs to reflect the citizens' concerns and also monitor government policies effectively. And most important, in a peaceful manner, NGOs help to extend the influences of the state actor in deciding Malaysia's foreign policy.
Hello, madam. My name is Charmaine Tin Zi Jin, and my matrix number is 270191. Today, I will be presenting part of the section of my assignment for on the second and third research question for the topic 1. The second and third research question is about why and how the NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy, and I will be starting from the second research question, which are why the NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy, and I will divide the points into 3 parts. The first part of my point is about the NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy since the NGO are representing the people in communicating their movement to the state actors, as the organization sharing the same goal with the people, and the organization surely know how the people will prefer the foreign policy to be improved. And moving on to the second point is about NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy since the organization are able to influence the political utilization of savagery. This because NGO are able to launch the authoritative movement from the public opinions and oppose the unfair deviation from the state actors. Through this, Malaysia has confined the state actors to be more democratic and be more considerate in formulating foreign policy. And moving on to the third point is about NGOs are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy since the organization are playing a transaction role between the state actors to the civil society. In this way, NGO can deem transmitted the civil concern of the state to the policymakers and let them acknowledge what should be changed in formulating a foreign policy. On the third research question is about how the NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy for topic 1. Basically, the NGO are able to influence Malaysian foreign policy by two circumstances, which are directly through the participant in foreign policy decision making process or through the continuous movement, and I will be explaining them in details. For the first point is about directly through the participants in foreign policy decision maker process. For this action, we can refer from the example on 1994, the JUST work, which named JUST in short form, had successfully posted its influence in Malaysia on humanitarian stand in banning the landemics issues in Malaysia. And for the second action is through the continuous movement. For this action, we can also refer from the Bakundang project in Malaysia, since the government are strongly and support this project as stating this project are able to provide the long-term needs in Malaysia, but however NGO are on the opposite side with the government. Even though the will of the NGO has been rejected by the government, but the organization has catch the international attention, and more than 20 countries has visited Malaysia to support the movement of the NGO and side with them.
Good day to you, Doctor. My name is Gar Fe with matrix number 270605. Now I will discuss on the impact of NGOs towards Malaysians' foreign policy. Apparently, NGOs in Malaysia has always functioned effectively according to their roles in promote the good governance. Despite of whether the influence is direct or indirect, the NGOs of Malaysia have actually persistently brought up positive impact towards the Malaysians' broad arrays of foreign policies, which including environmentals, economic, as well as the humanitarian issue. For instance, the NGOs in Malaysia had contributed towards Malaysians' foreign policy in the interest of environmental, as the NGOs had aware that the country shall be more attentive on the sustainable development. They had taken the initiative in producing research papers as well as the meetings with the government officials to communicate their research and concerns, especially during the Rio summits, and successfully impacted the government to drive and formulate the policy on sustainable development in the country. With the involvement of the social variables that represent by NGOs as an input of the foreign policies, it had actually in fact contributed towards a more comprehensive decision making by the Malaysian government in formulating their foreign policies. For instance, the Vietnam summit, one of the humanitarian issues that have been submitted by our government in the international platforms, is driven by the NGO itself. It was submitted that the human rights issues were always regarded as sensitive by the government, but with the consultations of the NGOs in Malaysia, it had influenced the governments to fulfill their commitment in international levels in choosing a stand in its foreign policy on this issue. That's why we can see from here the impacts of the NGOs towards Malaysia foreign policies. Now, moving on to the conclusion part for the first case study, which is the roles of NGOs in Malaysia and its impact to foreign policies, we can conclude that the NGO have played an important role in the decision-making process of foreign policies in Malaysia. This is because the NGOs, as a non-state actor, would be able to understand better what is the needs of the interests of the society, especially the grassroots level. In contrast with that, however, relatively much impossible for the state actor to understand all of these state interests, as the state actor are more confined to the bureaucracies and oftentimes view a situation through a general analysis. Due to that, the state actor might have left out some considerable amount of civil interest of its people while deciding the foreign policy, but NGOs is able to help the state actors in this part which they have been left out. Nonetheless, it is crucial to say that Until what extent that the NGOs of the state could exercise their function, it is significantly depends on the openness of the state actor itself in accepting the opinion and criticism raised out by this non-state actor. As mentioned before, if the movement of the NGOs of a foreign policy is more relative easier if they share a same objective with the state actor. This is because at the end of the day, the government of the state have the final say in deciding the foreign policies, while the NGOs are subjected to the state law and should have not act beyond with the state law regardless on any objective. With that, we will end the first topic discussion on our case study. Thank you.
For the second topic, I will be presenting about the introduction and first research question on the CNN effect. Okay, so starting from now, I will be briefly explain about the introduction on CNN effect. The CNN effect is referred to the global mainstream media. They are having an increased effect on overall of the foreign policy. Moreover, the phenomena of the CNN are first observed during the Gulf War. The rapid transmission of the image and the information from the war sense to the public televisions has resulted cable news network gained a huge attention from the public. Therefore, the CNN had also leads the interest of a group of people that to research on the relation between the media and the public opinions, especially in the matters that related to the foreign policy of a state. For the first research question on the second topic, we will talk about the CNN effect on foreign policy. As the CNN effect might influence the foreign policy, since most of the time things are covered up by the media and subsequently the foreign policy makers is compelled to react to it. Moreover, in the event where a high level of policy decision has been involved, such as military intervention or the humanitarian aid, are more likely to be susceptible to CNN effect. This is because international conflict often limited the control of the state in global media censorship.
Okay, so I would like to continue with how the CNN influenced United States foreign policy on Somalia. To further examine the CNN effect, this research will investigate this connection between media attention and the Clinton's administration's decision on Somalia's humanitarian intervention. It was submitted that the CNN effect had driven the decision-making process of United States in determining their foreign policy pertaining to the Somalia's humanitarian intervention. In retrospect, it is widely considered that the U.S. withdrawal from Somalia was prompted by public indignation and subsequent pressure to leave following the publication of unfavorable image of the conflict in the media. Furthermore, the CNN effect had acted as an accelerant that caused the United States to withdraw their humanitarian support from Somalia. This circulation of media pertaining to the negative depictions of the United States in Somalia issues has resulted a vast increment of public attention, and the government foreign policy had been questioned by the people itself. The people believe that the act of the government is like wasting their taxpayers' money. Besides, CNN effect had acted as an impediment for the United States government from continuing their foreign policy in Somalia humanitarian intervention. The CNN effect, which is the media criticism, had caused the transmission of information is too rapid, and even the government would have facing difficulty in network censorship. So, I would like to say that the influence of CNN effect is prominent in the agenda setting of the United States in their foreign policy on Somalia humanitarian intervention. The initial motive of the government in formulating such foreign policy is with a good faith to exercise its commitment towards humanitarian effort by diminish the factional violence in Somalia. However, the government has been pressured by tones of media criticism and disagreement voiced from their citizens, has resulted the state actor become inherently reactionary to survive within such a quick-fire environment.
It's me again, and now I will present on the effect of CNN influence on United States foreign policies on Somalia. If we examine the purpose of United States in formulating their foreign policies on the humanitarian interventions to Somalia, it is not hard for us to notice that it is a necessary step to be taken by the United States, as they are one of the influencing countries that actually have the responsibilities to commit towards the peacekeeping missions as well as the humanitarian aid missions, which raised out by the United Nations. Unfortunately, the aftermath of the CNN effects had actually led to the withdrawal of the United States in these humanitarian interventions. This is because due to the backlash from the media effects, which have actually severely affect the public confidence on the government standings in these international issues. So, in relations to these CNN effects towards United States foreign policies of Somalia, it could be discussed into two stages, which I will name it as the preliminary effects as well as the national out stages. So, at the very first place, the United States foreign policies in this Somalia humanitarian intervention was not publicly attentive until the President Bush officially announced these policies towards the public through the televisions. It could be noticed media saturations around this issue could be seen from the increments of the CBS coverage in this issue, from which is only 3 minutes 30 seconds over the 21 days period to 85 minutes in just 5 days. So you can see how crazy is this CNN effects in spreading the news towards the publics and cause them to be attentive to the issues. Nevertheless, the increments of the negative press through media on the increments of United States troops to Somalia has slowly been questioned by the public of its necessity. And this is the very first stage where the public opinion has started affected by the CNN effect. Nonetheless, now moving on to the second stages, which is the lead to the national outrage. It is because despite of those negative influence brought up at the very first place, the state is still tempting with their efforts in achieving its foreign policy goals on the Somalia issues by involving the peacekeeping missions of UNOSOM 2 against the ADIs. However, the CNN effects have again adversely worsened the public opinion when the skin of the dead US soldier had been pulled along the streets and had been circulated to the eyes of the public. Therefore, all negative presses have kept coming out to the eyes of the public and resulted the national outrage and rapidly erodes the trust of the public towards the decision of the United States government. The CNN effect have then led to a strong concession criticism from the public, and an immediate withdrawal of the intervention had been demanded by the public to the government. In short, at last, the CN effect have resulted the public in a view which is absolutely opposite to the government objective and had resulted the government to compromise and profit from any attempts in capturing the ADIs and withdraw the military actions from Somalia. So from here, we can see the effect of CNN influence on United States foreign policies on the Somalia issues. Thank you.
Okay, so in conclusion, in the past, any images or information that goes into the eyes of the public will be filtered by the government. With that, public will not be too attentive to whatever foreign policy decided by the state, as the government is limited and the most of the fact was unknown by them. Hence, we can know that the public opinion was under control of the government, and the policymakers would not face any backlash from any negative conduct during the execution of the state foreign policy. However, in an era now, state government had lack of the authority to control the transmission of actual scene and information from the 24 hours global mainstream media. Lastly, the policymaker had been confined by the CNN effect when deciding on the state foreign policy, as all the actions will be judged and monitored by the public. Any misconduct or negative execution that against the public belief will easily cause a quick fire environment to the state due to the CNN effect. That's all from us. Thank you.